have your thumb on the slide at all, it doesn't like to run. Oh, that was a light primer strike. I'm going to try it again.
Alright, so that introduction should be relatively telltale as to why I sold my FN502. However, it's not really that simple, so let me go ahead and explain. First off, let me start off by saying that when the FN502 was announced, I was super hyped for it because I'd grown quite fond of the 509 and other FN handguns, and ultimately I really wanted one. As it turns out, I was also kind of in the market for a new 22 pistol as well, because at the time I had a Ruger 1022 Charger, and I figured that would be a good choice for an SHTF situation, but I really decided I wanted something a little bit smaller. So, naturally, a pistol seemed like the better option. Knowing FN, I had no doubt in my mind that the 502 was going to be a very reliable, very dependable 22 pistol when it came out to market. However, I should have known right then and there once I noticed that it was actually made by Umarex that maybe it wasn't all that it was supposed to be. When I first bought the gun and I took it out to the range, I was more or less enamored by it. I mean, it was so fun to shoot this guy, and compared to the 1022 Charger, it wasn't even a comparison. It was just way more fun. Maybe that's because I prefer shooting handguns for some reason, but point being, I definitely enjoyed shooting it more. In comparison, the 1022 Charger wasn't the most reliable gun I've ever owned, that's for sure, and the FN502, I would say at the time, was relatively comparable, maybe a little bit better, so perhaps I was kind of making excuses for my gear, and I didn't mind it so much. To play devil's advocate a little bit, I don't think when I got it I actually disassembled the gun and cleaned or lubricated it. I may have thrown some lube on there, but I definitely didn't clean it, which is pretty typical for me. I don't typically disassemble and clean my firearms before I take them to the range. I don't really see the point to it. Just another consideration is that for the majority of the time I was shooting this handgun, I did shoot it suppressed. Specifically, I had my Silencer Co. Warlock 2 on it. So just keep that in consideration for the remainder of this review. So for that first range session, I guess if I had to throw a number based on memory, I probably had 4 or 5 different malfunctions ranging from failures to feed to more than likely a failure to extract here and there as well. Some of these issues were resolved later on throughout the process of shooting this gun, but I'll get more into that here in a minute. I didn't really think much of these failures. In fact, after shooting it for the first session and the second and probably third, it was about the same performance every single time, where it was just kind of okay. A few failures here and there, but nothing too major. But then one day I took it home, cleaned it, and put some grease on it, and took it to the range session that you're seeing now on video, and that's where the majority of the footage, if not all the footage from the opening scene came from. And let me tell you, that is where I got very frustrated with the FN502. Again, perhaps playing devil's advocate here, maybe we can blame myself a little bit for the failures I was having by putting grease on a 22. However, we are living in a relative state of wonder 22s, if I do say so myself. 22s that are, for the most part, ultra reliable. Things like the Taurus TX22, where, to be fair, I have not shot a TX22 with grease on it before, but I'd be willing to bet that because the TX22 has a stronger spring, and this and that it would run perfectly fine. So, moral of the story is I'm trying not to make excuses for my gear because it should have ran grease or otherwise. The FN502 I noticed from the very beginning had a very, very light spring, to the point where if you had a pretty high grip on the pistol and rested your thumb against the slide as it was recoiling, that alone would cause a malfunction. And that probably explains why the grease was such a bad idea. But on that range session, I mean, we had failures to feed, failures to extract, failures to fire, and one of the most common failures that has never gone away is that whenever you put a fresh magazine in the gun and hit the slide release or even do an overhand rack to chamber your first round, the slide would just not go forward. So I'm sure you've seen plenty of times throughout the video where I had to actually push on the slide to get the slide to go forward and chamber the round. You can't tell from the video that you're looking at now, but another issue we were having are with the iron sights in general. Not so much that they didn't work, except they just weren't accurate. Even at as far as maybe 10 yards, I had to aim about 6 inches low and 3 inches to the right in order to get a hit on a little steel plate. So the iron sights weren't very good. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Levi, no big deal. It is optics ready. Well, again, as you saw from the introduction, I did have a red dot on there, and that just brought up a whole nother issue. I had mounted a Holosun 407C on my FN502 using the RMR plate, and as you can see in this little clip here, the lugs that actually held the optic in place broke off inside of the optic. And that happened while shooting it, and I noticed it because my zero was way off. At that point, I had looked at the gun. While it was in my holster, I actually just kind of wiggled the sight to see if it was still in place, locked up nice and tight, and there was some wobble. What I initially thought was that the screws came loose, because I kind of forgot that the locking lugs were even there. But as it turns out, they broke off, and so I just talked to FN's warranty to get a new optics plate sent out, and that took a while. At this point, I was pretty much done with the FN502. I knew this was not going to satisfy me and achieve what I needed it to achieve. So I decided that I was going to sell it. But plot twist, I'm selling it. In fact, I already sold it to my brother. So it's still within the family and I'll still be able to shoot it. And one of the reasons why I didn't just sell it in general is because of the range session you're seeing now. We went out to a buddy's property dressed like a bunch of nerds, but I cleaned the gun properly, put some real oil on it instead of a grease, and we put maybe 200, 250 rounds through it and had zero malfunctions besides the slide not going into battery when you put a fresh mag in it, and that issue is probably never going to go away. But the point being is it ran perfectly fine with CCI mini mag and a Gila Super Extra, CCI standard velocity, which is the normal stuff that I ran throughout the entire time of shooting this gun. And at this point, I probably have, I don't know, maybe 1,000 rounds through it. And this is the first time it actually ran that many rounds without any issues. So it's a fine gun, but I still sold it to my brother. After that last range session, I'm not completely giving up hope on the FN502. However, instead I bought myself a Taurus TX22, which I should have done from the beginning. It's cheaper, more reliable, and I knew that, but I wanted to try the FN. But now with the announcement of the new Sig P322 or whatever it's called, that might be another one to look at. If it is as reliable as Sig and everyone else is claiming, holds 20 rounds, it's optics ready with fiber optic sights, that might be the one that can defeat the Taurus, finally. But time will tell on that one. Anyways, that's all I have to say about this until after 2 weeks after I upload it, then I remember something I forgot. But for now, that's it. So as always, thanks for tuning into the Troublemakers Guild. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section below. Remember 2 things, all gun laws are unconstitutional, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.
That's fine. We'll try it with 9. There you go. Action! Helps if you chamber. Action! Oh. I just tried to put my 9mm mag in there. Damn it. Alright. Alright.
Try one more time.
We will get this right.
We will get it right.